And hello.
Hello.
Bob and Mark, grumpy scientists.
Grumpy and grumpier. Yes, grumpy and grumpier.
So I was going to say, we just finished one video that was very specific about some talks that we did at SOPMed, the Society of Progressive Medical Education. This year, 2019, June, was in San Diego. So we just got back from that. We're going to kind of go over the material that we presented there. And we presented two sorts of things, right? One of them was data to show that you could measure improvements in brain function specifically, right?
Right.
From whatever. But the other thing we talked a lot about was how we can make progress in some of these areas. And we think the way to do that is crowdsourcing.
Well, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that the majority of studies, medical-based studies that have been done to date, clinical studies are done, they're extremely rigid. And so when I mean by rigid is they say, okay, we're going to do a study, and this would be something like what Professor Know-It-All would set up, and everything's got to be the same. Everybody gets the exact same formula, the exact same pill, exact same time of day,
and to the extent possible, it's the exact same person.
Yeah.
And they do this, and there's all kinds of arguments. Well, you have to control this and you have to control that. Well, what they're really doing, in a sense, an important sense, is they're p-hacking, which is to try to do everything they can to reduce the variability and the p-values of the resulting data. Right. So when they do studies on lots of things, cancer, you name it, metabolic diseases and even pain, they'll study a certain kind of mouse. And they might study a very specific strain of mice that's inbred. That's one gender, it's only one age, and only has one specific kind of problem, like a specific kind of cancer. And so what they find is they might find a drug or a treatment that helps that mouse. But then if they just change the mouse a little bit to a different gender or a different age, sometimes even if they just change the food or the bedding, their effect vanishes. And this is why we haven't seen a lot of progress. So how do we make progress?
Right. So one of the things is called adaptive studies. Yeah, and that really kind of mimics the real world.
It's the real world. Oh, this is sort of working better than that, so let's make sure everybody does this.
Right.
You have a study that changes over time. FDA hates that because it's hard to do the statistics. People like it because, like, hey, you're taking the wrong dose of something. It's not helping you that much. Take it a little bit more or a little bit less.
Or not just the wrong dose, the wrong drug, or the wrong treatment.
And the next thing you know, you're getting better just like everybody else. So I would say, rather than trying to study one specific type of mouse that's all nailed down in exactly one narrow thing, the way you make progress on human disease is that you study diverse human populations.
Yep. How do you
everyone? How do you do that? You do that well, there's a few ways to do that. They'll do like a population study. They'll look at a whole city like Framingham, Massachusetts or something and try to follow them. And the insights we get from that are pretty major. A lot of the recommendations you get today are based on just a few studies like that.
Yeah, that's right. And but basically crowdsourcing means
crowdsourcing
we want people to take part in it. We're not looking for people to write us a check so we can go do a study on a bunch of different mice and or a bunch of different people that look like mice or don't.
We're looking for participation.
We're just looking for people
active participation. Yeah. So the idea is that people can participate in studies of interest to them, and then we run the study in such a way that we try to change it as it goes so that by the end of the study, or as soon as possible, everyone's getting the maximal benefit. So there are certain things like chronic pain, which we don't need to run a whole control group and keep people in pain just to prove the fact that chronic pain, more or less, it's chronic, right? It's resistant to treatment. So we already know that. So if you take 100 people with chronic pain and you make that a control group, towards the end, you're going to have pretty close to 100 people with chronic pain, right? We don't want that. What we want to do is we take 100 people with chronic pain, and ideally in the end we end up with 0 people with chronic pain. And that tells every reasonable person what they need to know, which is you've got a pretty good chance of getting rid of chronic pain if you do certain things, right? So that's one of the things. There's other things besides chronic pain. So we talked about this. It's innovating with PEMF and brain gauge, and our innovation is just open-ended, diverse population, adaptive, crowdsource studies.
Right.
That's what we did. And we actually are conducting some of these right now. And we actually are, we're getting our first set of preliminary data. And we're going to kind of go through that.
We actually just went through some data.
Yeah, we'll go through that.
Yeah, forget what we just said. Just go back to the last set of slides, and you'll see that.
Yep.
We one of our first studies was just presented.
So the first thing we're doing to crowdsource things is we're trying to get people engaged, and so we're doing that with, and we're going to have a link right down there to the flexhealth.com or .co. It's going to be .co. That's what we got.
.com was taken.
.com was taken by us and then given up earlier. We didn't get on it fast enough, but it's flexhealth.co. There's a link down there, and you go to that, and it's a forum. And we don't, unless a person is really abusive, we don't exclude them. It's not like you got to be focused in on one discussion, and then we move things around to separate them so that people are talking about the right sorts of things. And just over here, looking over to the left, if you go to that link, what you'll see is that there's like a Flex Health info, experts forum, PEMF basics, brain gauge basics, and then how you use these things for general health and self-hacking, brain injury and neurodegenerative diseases, joints and arthritis, injury recovery, adjunctive and synergistic effects. So what other effects do you get if you're trying to, treat yourself for one thing? What other possible benefits can you see? Sleep and eye conditions, Lyme disease, pets and animals, dental health, cancer, sports medicine, pain and inflammation, and other interesting applications. And if somebody comes up with another interesting application that people engage in, then we create a new topic for people to discuss. It's a whole new discussion. So this is a forum that we have, we just put together and just posted a few weeks ago, so that people can talk about these things. And then Mark and I comment on them, and then we can actually data mine them, because they will include things. We've asked people to say specifically, what did you do? Specifically, what happened? And what we really want is people to contribute, hey, I was using PEMF or the brain gauge for this specific thing. I used it this specific way, and tell us your story. This is what happened. Boom, which is very, very helpful. So it's going to take a while, but that forum is really taken off. And then we actually have 3 studies going on. First one,
is the PEMF study.
It's just PEMF with urinary incontinence. So there's not really a brain gauge involved there, although secretly I think it would show something. I don't know.
I think so.
I think so, but we're trying to do this very simply, and so a lot of people, this is an underappreciated condition, urinary incontinence. Many people have it. About half of all women beyond childbearing age who have had children have urinary incontinence for one reason or other. It's usually stress incontinence, but the idea here is that there's some inflammation in the pelvic area, which causes a lot of different sorts of things in people 50 years old and older. So I think some joint problems, some back problems, some prostate problems, pelvic pain, and urinary incontinence. And I think a lot of this all sort of focuses in on inflammation. So we have a study going on, and we'll put a link to it down there where you can, we're going to try to keep it open as long as possible. The idea would be you can enroll if you have a urinary incontinence problem, and you can see whether or not PEMF will help you. And the answer is there's not a lot of effective treatment. In fact, there's no really effective treatments for urinary incontinence. However, we're finding in more than half of people, significantly more than half, they're getting a reduction or elimination of urinary incontinence with PEMF. And some people don't. So what we want to know is, can we start to see patterns? What are they doing? What are they trying? How is it helping them? And in the spirit of adaptive studies, if somebody didn't have luck doing it one way, we'll tell them some people are having good outcomes doing it a different way. Why don't you try that? And the idea here is that you can see people converge on an answer, right? Mm-hmm. That's the idea of an open-ended, diverse, adaptive study. You got lots of people, everyone's invited to the party, and we all figure the answer out together, and then we share it, right? So, looking back over at my cheat sheets, I'm going to give you the link. You can go down there, check it out. Also on Flex Health on the webpage, we're going to periodically update that with the outcomes of the study,
right?
So that people who are doing the study and everybody else can benefit from it. I think we really don't have a lot of restrictions as to who can be involved. It's just we need to know the conditions, so you have to share some information with us about what you're dealing with, so that other people can determine whether it's relevant for them or not. But we do protect your identity, but we do have to share information, and that's only if you want to participate. You can share what you want to share. So it's actually pretty simple. Another study we did, and we just finished it.
Also, did you mention how much success they're having?
Yes, I did.
So this is with Tom Lowe. We'll put the link to the
Tom
study.
Lowe. We'll put a link
I think it's around 75%.
Yeah, I said it was significantly more than 50, and I didn't want to bias people.
Well, I'm pretty sure that was a number.
Well, this is me. You're right.
I sort of saw on the.
This is an example of me being conservative. I don't want to give people false hope on something like
75% is not really false hope. It's just a little better than placebo.
It's a little bit better than placebo. Well, Tom was, we're all like, well, it's not helping everybody.
Placebo is 50, by the way.
But it's more than half of people we think we can improve, and it's with a non-invasive, no drugs, totally reversible. If you want to stop, you can stop anytime. That's the idea of these studies. If it's irritating you, you don't like it, it's not helping you, you can stop if you want. You can start up again. We just keep track of what you did. And, in the end, we'll have this huge amount of data that's very, very helpful. It won't be a really clean set of data comparing an average against another really clean set of data under super controlled circumstances, which is exactly the kind of data you want if you're looking for molecular mechanisms. You need that kind of hyper-controlled data with nothing else influencing. But if you're trying to look at human health and disease, then you need it to be kind of sloppier and squishier, and you need to look at much bigger groups of people for much longer groups of time. They're very diverse. The problems they enter in with are different, and you start to see patterns that you would never have anticipated. And the real strength of studies like this is that it can tell you things, it can answer questions you would never have thought to ask. That's what's amazing. And that's the second study. And this is another study. We're going to be posting this. I think we're shooting for about the middle of July 2019. So it's about a month from now. And that's all because the person who's doing it, I can't mention her name right now, but she's a nurse who just finished her PhD at Florida Atlantic University. Okay, I've been working with her for a couple of years. And she did her dissertation on this, PEMF and pain. And reduction in opioid use, for example. And we are going to publish the entire dissertation on our webpage, so you can see it. And she just did a study. We sent out 4,972 emails to anybody that we knew that had used PEMF and wanted to take part in this study. It's another crowdsourced study. And she took that data and interviewed people for like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, I think some were 3 hours long, about their experience using PEMF for pain, and she wrote it all down. And it was mostly sort of focused on the impact of quality of life. It was an official study for Florida Atlantic University. It was institutionally reviewed, so it's 100% legit. And then she would record it and transcribe it. And we'll be able to data mine that so that we can see how PEMF impacted people's lives. So it was, okay, sure, you can go ahead and you can chuck stones at it and you can say, oh, it's just descriptive. But technically, it's a descriptive exploratory study, right? And this one was not adaptive because it was all talking to people after the fact. Did it help you or not?
So can we mention one thing?
No.
Okay, we won't. No, but why is it only a descriptive study with no quantifiable thing? As long as it's grumpy science.
Don't get me angry. I was just starting to feel nice and warm and fuzzy. Go ahead.
You're warm and fuzzy.
He's got to drag me back to the dark side.
Study started out
a great study.
Fantastic study. And
this is why we are going to do this. We're going to take this out of a university.
Okay,
because you get a university. Oh God, hold on. Okay, breathe. Okay,
yeah,
you get a university. They get their hands on a great study and they turn it into an okay study.
Right. Well, this study is good despite the administrators have stepped in and said,
"Oh, you can't do this and you can't do that." Yes, we can.
Yeah.
There's FDA approval on the brain gauge. Is that correct? I mean, how could that hurt somebody?
They basically said, I can't remember the reason they gave.
They had
it was
some
pretty
rationale
lame.
for why we couldn't use a brain gauge.
You couldn't do a quantitative study, or you couldn't use the brain gauge for this.
Yeah, because it made it too complex statistically, and they couldn't.
They were actually saying it wasn't safe.
Yeah, and this thing is like approved and safety tested and everything. Brain gauges. It would. Well, you've
So
seen me
remember, we
strangle
actually
myself
talked
with a
before.
brain
We've
gauge.
had a couple of different things. One time, we got disapproved because the brain gauge would be dangerous if someone tried to swallow it
or strangle themselves,
or
with it,
strangle
as I have
themselves.
done here.
Well,
on
those were
these
two
videos.
separate agencies that are to be unnamed institutions.
Yeah,
that
gosh, I
said
was feeling
that.
so good too. But anyway, the thing is that she still made it a really good study.
Good.
But you've got to take these things away from universities. It's just like they will mess them up every time.
Yeah, that's the whole point of
That's the whole
crowdsourcing
point.
is because
So we're going
I don't
straight
think
to
people really understand how expensive.
power to the people.
Yeah, Freebird.
Marquis said,
Yeah.
power to people. I'm just doing that to aggravate Mark, but it's true. It's like we want to work directly with people and find out what works and find out what doesn't and give them good data and figure out what's going to help them and then put that all in aggregate and show you how that evolves from us kind of stumbling through it. Initially, the first year or two, we might stumble along, and then as things start to gel and you start to see patterns, all of a sudden you'll start to see a lot of people getting better, and it'll be very robust. It'll work for all kinds of people because this study involves all kinds of people with all kinds of conditions. And this was a study just for pain. You name it, pain.
Yeah.
Whoever of the 4,972, I have no idea how many of those people even had pain. Some did, some didn't. They were all welcome to call the nurse. She talked to them. And by the way, she finished her dissertation a week ago tomorrow. So it was last Tuesday. And in June of 2019, because you're probably not going to be viewing this the day we record it. But we're going to summarize the study for you now, really quick, and then post it for you in about a month when everything's been approved and stamped at Florida Atlantic University. But basically, she points out at the beginning of her dissertation that there's like over 100 million people every year with pain, and over 60% of all the opioid deaths are the result of having initially starting off with chronic pain. So like lots of people are dying because they have chronic pain that's not treatable. It's getting worse. It's not getting better. But she does point out in a sort of a dark way that in March of 2018, Congress passed a federal spending bill for $3.3 billion to, let me read this to you, to support the prevention, treatment, and law enforcement to curtail the opioid epidemic, which means the federal government paid a lot of money to get a lot of people hooked on opioids, and now it's putting the money in necessary to throw them in jail, right, to prevent suicide. So just talk about creating a problem, making it worse, and then
creating an
punishing
industry.
people, creating an industry. Super bad, and makes me super angry, right? So the Florida Atlantic University Nursing Pain Study, as it was planned, was supposed to be just phone call. This was our really first, really structured crowdsourcing study. Just ask you 7 demographic questions. Who are you? Don't have to give a name, but sort of describe you, where you are, how old are you? And then 9 questions about your experience with using our PEMF micropulse and pain. And then you can tell the story about your illness. And then this is where we get this huge amount of extra information that's really, really valuable. We'll talk about that in a second. And we thought it would only be about 30 minutes to 60 minutes per discussion. I think the minimum length was closer to 93. I could be wrong, but I think she always had pretty long discussion, and some of them went quite a bit longer than that. But so it was conducted. It was convenient for the person, and it was confidential, right? But we used their information in aggregate. And so for her dissertation, she had 42 participants who gave interviews, well, many more than that, but she included 42 for her dissertation. And the research question was, tell me about your experience using micropulse PEMF for relief of your pain. And the questions, I think, and the way they did the interviews were adaptive. So as she did the interviews, she got better and better at them, which mostly amounted to people telling their story, right? Just telling her what they did for pain.
So let me just point out, adaptive questions are not normally allowed on a standard study.
Standard
it's
study,
extremely rigid.
Extremely
you ask
rigid.
a question, and if they answer one way, you're done.
You got it right. You don't have the flexibility of like an open, fluid conversation with somebody. What you really need, if you want to find out what people are really doing, you need to have an open, fluid basically unrestricted
Sort of the way
conversation.
I give my I used to give oral exams quite frequently back when my class size was smaller.
Right, exactly.
And what I do, in the ways you do it, it was very adaptive. So you'd ask a question, it was clear they knew that. Ask another question about another area, they knew that. But you get to the question that they sort of stumble on. It's like, okay, we're going to ask a lot of questions about that.
Exactly. So you get into this. Oh, really? Isn't that interesting? And here's a good example that is my cheat sheet here that I'm looking at on the left. So one of the people she spoke to, and this is a whole doctoral dissertation. You'll be able to access it here in about a month. But one of the people she was talking to about using it for pain also discovered accidentally, trying it for eye pain, that it improved their vision. And this is something that wouldn't come out and wouldn't be published in a study on pain, as your vision has nothing to do with it. Well, maybe it does. Maybe part of that person's vision problem had to do with the same thing that was causing pain, and if you fix that problem, maybe the vision gets better. Maybe they're separate, but PEMF is making it better. But this is something that comes out of an open, fluid study like this. And this, by the way, is not unique. There are many people who pointed out, several anyway, who pointed out that their vision was improved when they were trying to do something related to pain. Okay, interesting finding. Other people pointed out that that their healing rate increased by a factor of 2 or 3. It's not just that their pain went away, but then when they hurt themselves, they would heal up in them 2 or 3 times faster. Another person didn't ask this question, but another person said their pain relief was total, and they stopped using prescription pain meds and a bunch of non-prescription pain meds, if you know what I mean. So a lot of that stuff just went away. And that's, other information. And people offer this kind of, because people want to know the answer. I want to know the answer. Mark wants to know the answer. Everybody who's doing this, we all want to know the answer, And it's like, if I did something that works, I want everybody to know about it. So maybe if it applies to you, maybe you can get something out of it too. So the overall results of this study, just so you know, the interviews tended to go longer than she had anticipated. It really amounted to her listening, the nurse listening for just a few basic questions. People would go on and on with their story because people want to be listened to, right? And then most people put their pain in the context of quality of life. They didn't quantify, I had a 7. I mean, they did often. But then it's like, how does it impact your life, right? Friends, family, effects on career. That's something that's is rarely studied is if you have a lot of pain, how does that affect other people in your family? And looking at our study in El Salvador, there's not a big social support mechanism for people who can't work. And some people who have really severe pain can't work anymore. And that affects everybody in their family because they have to live hand to mouth. They got to work, produce, make the income for the family. If they can't do that, their pain actually causes, distress for everybody in the family. So many people were interviewed, but only 42 were included in the dissertation. All but one reported a significant improvement in pain. We didn't cherry pick it. It's like whatever people said. One person said, it didn't help me that much, right? So that's about 97% of people were getting pretty good improvement. Many people reported other significant unexpected benefits like improved vision, improved sleep, improved all kinds of things. Most people then were so pleased with it because of what it did for pain. They tried it on all kinds of other things, on their spouses, their children, their parents, their pets, that kind of thing. Some experiments with unusual applications. Won't get into that too much. It's going to be published on our webpage, and we'll make it widely available for people. And basically, the other study that we were doing was the one that we reported on in our last video, which we did with Sara Alfaro. And that one was a study that included the brain gauge and PEMF. So going forward, now that we are free of a university.
Right, and also to mention that, like, even with Sara, she sometimes did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different treatments, depending on the person's condition. That would be an adaptive study that would not qualify for a rigid study.
Oh, and that
you can only do one treatment, and you have to categorize all types of pain. And everybody knows no two people are alike. So
I know, I'm not even like myself most of the time. So this is the thing, So we want to do these crowdsource studies in a way that takes all the, the uncertainty and everything of the human population and the human condition and just embraces it. Says, okay, it's there. So we just take all of that. We take that as a strength, not a weakness. Because if you do one thing and you can measure everybody's improvement, like a brain gauge, and it works for just basically anybody who uses it, that tells you you have a very robust tool. And if you can do one intervention that can really help most people with pain, or you can do a combination of things that helps almost everybody with pain, that's what you want to know. You don't want to know, does this one thing that some professor have patented, cure this one condition for one person? You don't want to know that. You want to know, what are your chances of getting an improvement if you try something? And
right.
That's what we're all about.
Right. And then, but multiple conditions, multiple parameters, everybody being different, all kinds of different treatments. You just collect the data, and then the analysis, everything will fall out, and you'll start to get a hint as to what is working, not just what is working, but why it's working. That's the most important question.
So here's the thing. We're going to post this on our Flex Health webpage, and so you can be involved at any level you want. You can ignore us. That's fine. Most people do. You can go to the webpage. You can just read about it, get something out of it, and we're just going to post everything there, and you can take what you want. And then studies, and we're going to put in more invitations for studies, and then we're going to do some analysis. We're going to publish some of these things formally, right? And you can take part in formal studies or informal studies. Mark has a few other ones that he has planned in mind. So do I. Things related to fixing your joints to the extent that you can using PEMF.
What about fixing your car?
Fixing your car, no.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about cars. I don't fix cars anymore. Used to do that. But anyway, we're gonna talk about these things, and you can participate as little or as much as you want. You can go in and do a short part of it for a few days or a week. But what we're really looking for is for people to look at really long-term things. And so you've had a problem for many, many years. What sorts of things have you tried that have failed? And then you try something new. Does it work, like PEMF, for example? Does it give you better cognition, which is an important part of your life? And how long does that last? And we're not talking about a typical university study, 6 weeks later. We're talking about like 3 decades later, right? We're talking about, so we're going to keep these things open for as long as we can, years, hopefully, or decades. And that's what we have in mind. And this is just the beginning. So, anything else?
That'll do it.
I think that's it. Okay, thanks a lot, and we'll see you later.
See you next time.